My brother's funeral, my sister-in-law mockingly said, the $100 million inheritance is going to me now, and you're going to be a beggar. Pack your things and get out of here. I couldn't help but laugh at him. She said to me, have you gone crazy? A big surprise awaited her. My husband's estate, valued at $100 million, along with our house, will be passed down to me. Since we don't have any children, everything will come to me alone. However, my sister-in-law often speaks with a sense of entitlement that makes it seem like she expects something different. My name is Laura, and I'm a 48-year-old who works part-time. My husband and I are parents to 3 wonderful sons. One is a senior, and the other is a sophomore in high school. This year, my eldest son is preparing for his college entrance exams and aspires to become a lawyer. He has been working very hard toward this goal, which has been a dream of his since he was a young child. I believe my son's passion for law might be influenced by my older brother Brian, who is also a lawyer. A few years ago, my brother established his own law firm and even hired several lawyers to work with him. My eldest son grew up admiring my brother's achievements, which further fueled his interest in studying and consistently achieving good grades, even during his elementary school years. When my brother learned about my son's desire to follow in his footsteps and become a lawyer, he was absolutely thrilled and has been encouraging him ever since. Whenever my son and my brother meet, my son always tells him with determination, "Uncle, I'm going to be a lawyer just like you." My brother often amusedly chuckles and replies, "Hurry up and become a lawyer so you can follow in my footsteps." Despite being married, my brother doesn't have children of his own. When he visits us, he happily spends time with my sons, playing with them and indulging their every whim. My brother's wife is 8 years younger than him, but unfortunately, she's not someone who is easy to get along with. She has a rather difficult personality and never visits our house, so we don't have much of a relationship. When my brother and I lost our parents at a young age, he took on the role of a guardian for me. He was there to walk me down the aisle when I got married, and not long after that, he got married himself. My husband and I were relieved to hear that my brother had found someone to marry, especially a young woman who could bring happiness into his life. However, when we finally met his fiancée, I was taken aback by how unhappy and sulky she seemed. We were expecting to meet a joyful woman who was excited to marry my brother, but instead, she looked at us with a rather grumpy expression. Despite my surprise, I tried to be polite and said in front of my brother and his fiancée, "You two make a great couple." But later, when I was alone with my husband, I confessed my true feelings. I couldn't help but express my concern about her demeanor and how it might affect my brother in the long run. I couldn't help but wonder why my sister-in-law seemed so unhappy after she and my brother got married. My husband noticed it too and shared my concern, saying, "She wasn't exactly a cheerful bride, was she? But there's nothing we can do about it now." My brother had married a woman 8 years younger than him, and just before their wedding, he bought a beautiful house. To celebrate, my husband and I took our children to visit them. The house was magnificent, just as I expected from my brother, who owns a successful law firm. But when we arrived, my sister-in-law was nowhere to be seen. In a light-hearted attempt to break the ice, my husband joked with my brother, "Has your wife already left you?" However, instead of laughing, my brother's expression became serious, which made both my husband and me uneasy. My brother explained that whenever there's an issue, his wife returns to her parents' house. That day, she was staying with her mother to celebrate her birthday. My husband felt bad for making the joke, his shoulders slumping in regret. Then, out of nowhere, my brother asked us with a straight face if, "I can't have children of my own, would you consider letting me adopt one of yours?" At first, I thought my brother was joking, but his serious demeanor told me otherwise. His unexpected request left me speechless, but my husband, trying to lighten the mood, chuckled and said, "We can't predict the future, so let's talk about it if that time ever comes. If you're okay with our kids, you can adopt whichever one you want." Though my husband didn't take the request seriously and brushed it off, I couldn't shake the unease I felt about the whole situation. I was particularly worried about the tension between my brother and his wife. It was clear that something wasn't right between them, but I didn't feel it was my place to interfere. After that, whenever we visited my brother's house or he came over to ours, it was always just him. My sister-in-law never joined us, and my brother never brought her up in conversation, so I avoided asking about her. They had been married for more than 8 years, and over time, it was almost as if I had forgotten she existed. This year, my eldest son was accepted into his dream law school, and my brother came over to our house to celebrate the good news. However, during the visit, he brought up the topic of adoption again. "Like I mentioned before, would you allow me to adopt one of your children?" he asked, this time with a seriousness that caught me off guard. My brother and his wife had been unable to have children, and it seemed that this issue had been weighing heavily on him for years. They had just gotten married the last time he asked, and now, all these years later, the question had resurfaced. We had discussed the possibility of adoption before, so there wasn't any rush to make a decision. However, this time, my brother seemed more serious about it. Even so, my husband didn't seem to grasp the weight of the situation and responded quickly, "Would you prefer to adopt our eldest son since he wants to be a lawyer?" My husband said it so casually, but I was much more cautious. After all, this was a significant life-changing decision for our sons. Although they would be with my brother, their uncle, I knew they would be fine in terms of family connection, but my concerns ran deeper. I was particularly worried about my sister-in-law. What if she didn't treat my son well, because he wouldn't be her biological child? So I asked my brother, "Is your wife on board with the idea of adoption?" My brother gave a small, sour smile and said, "Don't worry about her. We've already talked it through." His words gave me some relief, knowing they had discussed it as a couple. Still, I couldn't decide on the spot. I wanted to talk it over with my 3 sons first. They were both in high school, old enough to have a say in such a big decision, so we left the conversation there for the day, agreeing to think it over. A few days later, I received a call from my brother's law firm. They informed me that my brother had collapsed. Panicked, I rushed to the hospital, where I found several of his colleagues waiting anxiously. My brother had suffered a stroke while at work and was now unconscious. After I arrived, the staff from the law firm left, but not before mentioning that they had been unable to reach my sister-in-law. I tried calling her on their home phone, but there was no answer. I didn't even have her cell phone number. Later, my husband and our younger son arrived at the hospital, but despite our efforts, we still couldn't get in touch with my sister-in-law. Eventually, my second son found a smartphone among my brother's belongings. We managed to unlock it and searched for her number. When I called, she answered angrily, "I told you not to call again. I will sue you." Her harsh tone shocked me, but I quickly said, "It's Laura, Brian's sister. My brother has passed out and was taken to the hospital." As soon as she realized it was me on the phone, her tone softened. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it was Brian. You said he collapsed." I explained my brother's condition and told her which hospital he was in. Surprisingly, she responded almost cheerfully, "I can't come to the hospital right now because I have things to do, but please let me know if there are any updates." And with that, she hung up the phone. I couldn't help but wonder what could possibly be more important to her than being by her sick husband's side. It was clear that my sister-in-law wasn't going to be of any help, so we decided to take care of my brother ourselves. Since my eldest son had just finished his university entrance exams and was spending most of his time relaxing at home, he took on the responsibility of visiting my brother at the hospital every day on my behalf. Despite our efforts, my brother never regained consciousness and remained in critical condition. Yet during this entire time, my sister-in-law neither called nor visited the hospital. About a week after my brother was hospitalized, I decided to call her again. This time, she answered quickly and, to my shock, asked gleefully, "What's the matter? Did he die?" Her rude and heartless attitude made me want to scream at her, but I held back and quietly replied, "No, he's still alive. Why don't you visit the hospital?" Her response only irritated me further. "I'm not a doctor, nor am I a spiritual healer. There's nothing I can do to help him recover," she retorted as if she were annoyed by my call. Her cold and uncaring demeanor enraged me even more, so I hung up the phone. It was then that I began to suspect that my brother's desire to adopt one of my sons might have stemmed from his troubled marriage. Perhaps he had already given up on the idea of having children with his wife. When my brother first got married, I had asked him how they met, and he mentioned that they had been introduced through a marriage counseling agency. I started to wonder if my sister-in-law had married him simply because he was a lawyer and she wanted to live a comfortable life. This thought made me even angrier. When I shared my concerns with my husband, he pointed out something even more unsettling. "If Brian dies in this situation," he said, "his wife will inherit everything since they don't have any children." My husband suggested that perhaps the reason my brother had brought up the idea of adoption when he came to celebrate our son's acceptance into law school was because he was thinking about what would happen to his estate. I wished I could have made a decision about the adoption back then, but it was too late now.